Welcome to Top Shelf here at the Score Studios for our 2025 NHL mock draft with my guys Kyle Cushman, John Matisz, Josh Wegman. I'm Aidan Thakkar, and we are going to run through the entire first round today. We're going to do this. We're going to start with Josh. He's the 101, and we're just going to go each taking like every fourth team. I think that's
pretty simple.
Yeah, that's good math.
Pretty straightforward.
Pretty straightforward.
Running through all 32.
32 picks. We got to get through all of them. There's a lot of chalk, I think, at the start, but I think it'll get interesting. I got some interesting ideas, and I know we have different mindsets, and I think this draft is going to be one that could go in a lot of different ways. So this is our best guess, and Josh, take us away.
All right, no surprise at number one, Islanders taking Matthew Schaefer, potential franchise defenseman. I feel like there's just no red flags in his game, and this is kind of a no-brainer.
Yeah, fair enough. I think it's at this point he's like super just kind of like favorited to go there, unless I think the Islanders like traded down. But even then, if they're trading down, someone's trading up for Schaefer. And
it would be shocking if they did anything but take.
Obviously, everyone in New York's like, oh, we want Higgins, local boy, but they're better off just trading up and kind of while keeping their pick if they really wanted Higgins.
Yeah, the one red flag is obviously the lack of games this season, but every game he played in, going back to August at the Hlinka Gretzky through to his injury at the World Juniors, he was lights out as one of the youngest players in the draft as well. He's easily the best prospect for me.
Schaefer at 1 and Michael Misa at 2 to the Sharks. I think that's pretty much a foregone conclusion at that point. Probably was the most productive player in this entire class, and I think the chalk ends at 2, and then we can get interesting at 3. So who you got there, John?
Yeah, I think Chicago, they need it sounds weird to say this because they have Connor Bedard, but I feel like they need goal scorers, and Antoine Frandel can provide that and also be, a two-way center with some physicality. He had a really good year in the Allsvenskan, the second league in Sweden, and I think it's kind of strange that there's talk of Chicago maybe shopping this pick because I feel like there's plenty of really strong and talented players here, but I like the Frandel fit.
Yeah, I feel like the talk of them potentially shopping is because they just so desperately want immediate help. I don't think they're trading the 3rd overall pick for a 27-year-old or something like that.
Right, sure.
But yeah, I get what you mean. But I think if they do hold the pick, Frandel makes a lot of sense. He's a guy that can play on the second line. He's a guy that could play next to Bedard or maybe move Bedard to the wing. I think there's a lot of flexibility there. I like Frandel at 3. 4?
Yeah, 4, everyone expects this to be a wild card pick with Utah, jumping up into the top 4 out of the lottery. But I don't have them going too crazy with this pick here with Caleb Desnoyers, the best player in the QMJHL this season, as the youngest player on his team, the best team in the QMJHL. He's just a stud two-way center that looks like he's going to be a perfect complement to a more exciting offensive guy like Logan Cooley in the future. And so if you look at what the New Jersey Devils have in the Jack Hughes, Nico Hischier 1-2 punch, maybe have something similar there with Desnoyers. I really like that fit with Utah at 4 here.
Yeah, there's a lot of talk of them looking at Brady Martin, but I do think as we get close to the draft, maybe those storylines might shift a little bit. And because Brady Martin's really exciting. You're watching what Sam Bennett's doing in the
exactly,
playoffs,
the Sam Bennett hype.
Oh, it's really exciting. But even if you were to redraft that 2014 class, I wonder if Bennett, does Bennett go 3rd overall after Reinhart and Draisaitl? I don't know. I feel like you still would rather have a William Nylander on your team or I don't know. There's other guys in that class as well, but it's curious. I'm curious to see if they do go after a Brady Martin.
And this is a team that's not afraid to go off the board, right?
No, 100%.
So I think Utah's super fascinating here, and they could potentially trade back or trade for a young NHLer. There's a lot of intrigue with that 4th pick.
Yeah, 5?
Nashville's going to take James Haggins here. The Predators have never really had a super skilled first-line center in their entire history, with all due respect to David Legwand. I think Haggins is a good swing here, great playmaker, really dynamic offensive player. I think they would have preferred maybe Desnoyers or Frandel if they were available, but I think they'd be pleased to take Haggins here.
They just need the high-end skill and upside in their pipeline, and just kind of in the franchise's history as well. They've had the Philip Forsberg star on the wing. They've never had that guy at center outside of one great season from Matt Duchene. So it's they need that kind of player. If he's available at 5 after being the preseason number 1, I think that's a home run type pick.
100%. I love the Haggins pick and fit in Nashville. At 6, Philly, I think there's been a ton of talk of this guy falling outside the top 10 or falling even deeper into the middle of the teens, and that's Roger McQueen, because
nice,
really, really big, center with some injury issues this year. Apparently, he looked and said he was really healthy at the combine, but he also missed the last game of the playoffs. There's a lot of questions, but 6'5" centers, right-handed shot center, that can skate, stick handle, shoot, and do all that. They don't grow on trees. And Philly's in a really interesting spot because what do they desperately need? And that is probably a player to staple next to Matvei Michkov for the next 15 years, but not a second-line center. They don't really need that Sean Couturier-esque, like, two-way kind of guy. In my mind, they have to swing for the fences at that top, just the top of the lineup guy. And I think of the players left on the board, centers at least, you're talking McQueen, Martin, Jake O'Brien, and then obviously Porter Martone playing on the wing. I think highest ceiling is probably McQueen. He probably also has the lowest floor, most likely guy to play the least NHL games out of that group. But if he does hit, he could be your Tage Thompson type player, which I think is just such a difference maker for Philly. So I have McQueen going to the Flyers.
Yeah, and with Philly, we saw them take the risky type pick with Matvei Michkov a couple years ago. Obviously, he's played out very well for them. I do want to pose one question to you because we did see last year Caden Lindstrom had kind of the same kind of talking points at the Combine, and then he didn't play a game for basically an entire year. Is that a concern for you at all going into this draft?
So I think it's definitely a concern. I think what helps McQueen's thing is that he kind of went through that injury at the same time Lindstrom did, right? And so he's coming presumably healthy right now as Lindstrom is. Where Lindstrom last year was kind of the injuries are lined up a year apart, right? So like they kind of happened at the same time. So you think McQueen's healthy now. The question is this going to be a reoccurring thing? Is this going to come back up and keep haunting him for the next 5 to 10 years and hindering his development? That's the fear, rather than is he going to be able to train this summer? I think he is training this summer, and he's training right now. Obviously, he's a full participant at the Combine. There's definitely risk associated with him, but I think the upside is there.
Yeah, and I think that question is what is going to determine whether he does go as high as this, because I think on pure talent and upside he should be, or whether he's a faller on draft day.
Yeah, he 100% could go 6. He could also go like 14. So
yeah.
100, yeah. All right, 7th overall. What do we got, John?
Brady Martin, who I think the Bruins would be absolutely thrilled to see him available at 7, and I don't know how much thought they would put into anyone else, to be honest. I feel like he has Bruins written all over him as this forechecker, this hard hitter, and the guy who can score and play make. Like, he kind of brings everything to the table. I mean, I guess his skating could be worked on, but that's neither here nor there. And, yeah, the thing with Brady Martin is that if you squint enough, you see maybe a Brad Marchand light. And as we know, Bruins fans miss that current Florida Panther. So, yeah, I mean, Boston needs a lot in their system. And Brady Martin is like a very high floor guy. Like, I don't know what his ceiling is ultimately in the NHL, but, you know, recency bias is a hell of a drug. And we're seeing in the playoffs that there's some players that are kind of like Brady Martin. And I think that Don Sweeney would be all over that pick.
I think worst case scenario, you're getting Kiefer Sherwood, which is like, right? Like, it's just like...
not great at 7, but yeah.
No, that's exactly right.
Worst case
yeah,
scenario,
if you're saying worst.
You're getting a bowling ball kind of
Yes.
guy that's going to chip in 15, 17 goals kind of thing and 300 hits. But best case scenario, you're getting the guy that's leading the playoffs in goals. And he's also a right shot, so you get that as well.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can stick at center, those right shot centers are so valuable. So I love the fit at 7, and I love the upside at 7 as well.
Well, and Brady Martin's not going to the draft because he's going to be on his farm
Good
working
farm
away.
boy.
Yeah.
You know that shot him up
Yeah.
a few
Oh,
spots on every draft list in the NHL.
Yeah, good old Canadian hockey boy,
Yeah.
right? From Elmira.
Great
Love it.
personality, great competitor. Like,
Yeah.
just killed every interview at the Combine. So, yeah, like his stock is just
And he's not just
impossibly high
a
right
hitter
now.
and like a physical
No.
guy. Like, he has legit skill.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
100%. Okay, moving on to number 8, the Seattle Kraken.
yeah, interestingly, we still got Porter Martone on the board here,
Yes.
a guy that I think a lot of us could see going as high as number 3. Not going to go with him here at Seattle, though.
Bit of a tease.
Radim Murtka, the first defenseman the Kraken take ever in the first round. Look, the Kraken have so many forwards coming along that I think they desperately need to grab the second best defenseman in this class, and you can debate who that is, but for me, I look at the physical tools that Murtka brings. 6'6", well over 200 pounds, good skater, can move the puck, played right in their backyard with the Seattle Thunderbirds after coming over from Czechia this season. When you look at like the play-stopping, shutdown type defender in this draft class, I think Radim Murtka is that guy atop that list as that play stopper. So I think he goes number 8 here to Seattle as their first premium defense prospect ever.
Yeah, a lot of people really high on Merca and really high on the ceiling and like floor. They think he's just kind of a home run right there. Who do you got at number 9 though? Is it time for Porter Martone's fall to end?
It is. And I think if this is how the draft shakes out, Buffalo is sprinting to the podium. Well, I guess it's virtual now, so virtual sprinting to the
Gary
podium.
Bettman sprinting to the podium, or
They're
Bill
telling
Daly.
Not
Gary
using the 5 minutes or whatever they get. Just let's get this over with.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's obvious best player available at this point. And I think taking a winger is almost ideal for Buffalo since it's the easiest position to develop, and Buffalo needs help right away. Martone could maybe be in the NHL like 2 years from now, making an impact. They have a lot of smaller forwards too, some of them coming up. So I think Martone would be just an amazing fit here.
Yeah, I think a close comparable I've seen for him is Alex Tuck, and if it sounds like Alex Tuck might be moving on from Buffalo potentially, that's a great successor pick. And you say 2 years, but I actually wonder about Porter Martone playing in the NHL next year.
Yep.
He's got the most experience out of pretty much
He went to the Worlds,
He went
yeah.
to the Worlds.
He didn't look out of place there.
No,
either.
and I think Buffalo, for example, could plug a guy like
Knowing
that.
Buffalo, they'll just be like, "Hey, here's your NHL
Well, they
spot."
took Zach
Sink or swim,
Benson,
buddy.
13th
13,
overall,
flushed him right in
and
there.
he made the roster right
Yeah.
away. And very different physical play type, of course. But Porter Martone, it would be surprising to see him drop on draft day like this. I don't think it's unrealistic at all because he's the winger. There's a lot of centers there. The pace of play is maybe the question mark. But the pure playmaking is some of the best in the draft. And like you said, it would be Buffalo sprinting up to the Zoom call or whatever to make that kind of pick.
All right, at 10, the Anaheim Ducks. For me, I look at this rebuild that's been going on for a long time. One, I wonder if they would consider trading this pick. But two, I'm thinking who is their 50 goal scorer or their 40 goal scorer perennial guy of their top prospects? Because I don't know if it's Leo Carlsson. I don't know if it's Mason McTavish. Maybe it's Beckett Seneca. For me,
You don't believe in Trevor Zegras anymore?
no. Pure upside left on this draft. I think the guy with the best chance of being like just your superstar PP1 guy, probably doesn't play on the PK, not exactly a good two-way forward, and that's Justin Carbonneau from
that's
the
fun.
QMJHL. He is just so talented. Great skater, unbelievable hands, super creative, and fantastic shot. The big knock on him is that the back check is just not in the game. And if you were to plug him, though, in your top 6 and he plays 17, 18 minutes a night and you kind of shelter him a little bit and you put him on the power play, I think he could be productive and productive soon for this team because the shot is NHL ready. The skating is there and the hands are there. And I think Carbonneau could be an elite player in the NHL, definitely some risk, but I do think the upside is definitely there.
I mean, you can teach defense, right? Like, most of it is effort-based, if we're being honest. So, any prospect that has defensive deficiencies, it's not that big of a deal, especially if you're a forward. I like this pick. Like, it's off the board as far as what we see out there, rankings, other mock drafts, but I like your case.
We're kind of in this range now, though, where like 10 to 20, it could really go any direction.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, I think the pick makes sense.
Yeah.
And he's a sick player. Highlight reel,
Number
top
one.
3
Oh,
in the
it's
draft
disgusting.
class
It's
at least.
so good. It's
some of the best hands in the draft, as you mentioned, one of the best shots in the draft. And it comes down to the two-way play a little bit. I think he's a competitive player, and he's not tiny either. Like, he's 6 foot, 6'1".
100%.
So there's a lot of upside there.
Yeah, and I could see them going for Jake O'Brien and looking for that third center to work alongside McTavish and Carlson, but I just think the upside of Carbonneau makes this pick make sense. 11, though, who we got?
Keyshawn Aitchison out of the Barrie Colts. Thunderous hitter. Will drop the gloves immediately after and destroy that player. But he's not just a tough guy. He's got playmaking skills,
Scored 26
a monster
goals,
shot.
Yeah.
Character off the charts, great personality. And I like the idea of like a Bash Brothers of Aitchison and Rutger McGorty in Pittsburgh moving forward. And the Penguins, they have a lot of needs. Like, they're a team in transition. I feel like this is I don't know if safe pick's the right way to put it, but it's a pick that makes sense to me because there's a lot to like about Aitchison, basically up and down the sort of scouting report on him. And, yeah, I like injecting him into that blue line pipeline.
Yeah, fair enough. And I think what Pittsburgh needs more than anything else are prospects that will be NHL players.
Yeah.
And at 11 in this draft, I think that's kind of what you're looking for. There's the upside I think drops off pretty quickly in this draft, and I think Aitchison, at worst, in my mind, is a guy that is your like fifth defenseman and just brings the energy every night and can kind of do things on both
Screams
sides.
future fan favorite.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Moving on to 12, the New York Rangers.
Yeah, the Rangers are thrilled that this guy's still on the board. Jake O'Brien, he's a guy that I could easily see going as high as like top 5 even, like depending on what some teams like. He's a right-handed center who led the OHL in power play production this season. Incredible vision, great playmaker, and ultimately when you're talking about the top 12 here, there's going to be a couple guys that either surprise in the top 10, or when you're talking about 13, 14 guys who are like, they got to go in the top 10. Well, not everyone can go in the top 10, right? And somebody's got to slip. And for us here, it's Jake O'Brien. Could easily see him going higher on draft day. But as a right shot center with some size, 6'2", a bit lanky, so there's some physical development to go there. There's a lot of upside as a top 6 skilled offensive center.
He's one of the youngest guys in the draft, too. I think July birthday or something like that.
June, July, something like that.
The interesting thing to me is he finished third in scoring on Brantford. That is, he was a big reason why Nick Lardis scored 71 goals, the overager that's in the Blackhawks system. But I really like O'Brien as well. I think he has some Dylan Strome in him, so it could take him a little while, I think, to develop because he is a little lanky, and I think there's some things that need to kind of be some kinks to be worked out. Like, you can't just be a power play guy.
Yeah.
Like, you need to have, if you're going to be a center, like, you need to be able to do more than that. But I love the playmaking, and I think the offensive upside is definitely there.
Yeah, and number 13, Red Wings taking Jackson Smith. I think he's another guy who could easily be a top 10 pick. 6'4" at the combine, I believe he measured in at. Really great skater, great offensive skill. He's a guy, he compared himself to a bit of a Shea Theodore, Miro Heiskanen, who he models his game after. I think the Theodore fit is really easy to see. And, I mean, then you could envision a 4-pack of defensemen on Detroit one day with Smith and Seider, Edvinson, and Sandin Pellikka, and you're looking pretty good one day.
Yeah, one day. Well,
the eyes are playing.
The eyes are playing.
Yeah, the eyes are playing.
Just taking shape.
Yeah, just don't. Detroit just can't take some random forward that was projected to go 27th because that seems what they do every year. 14, the Jackets, I think, are really upset that Jackson Smith went 1 pick in front of them. I think they would love Smith there, but I think they are happy to see that Victor Eklund is still on the board because I think he's a guy that people think could go as early as 9 potentially. Maybe
Arguably
even
had
higher.
a better season than Anton Frundell.
100%. I think the difference is that he's playing on the wing. He's a little bit smaller. But Anton Frundell, they asked him about Eklund, and he said that Eklund's he's small, but he wins every puck battle.
Yeah.
He's just
ferocious.
Yeah. We've seen how good his brother's already turned out as an NHL player, and I think the Jackets are happy to add another tool like that to their prospect cupboards.
BPA at this point.
Yeah, 100%.
Heard some Travis Konechny comparisons to Eklund, which could be interesting.
Yeah, it's a good one. Okay, 15, who we got, John?
Speaking of comparisons, I'm going to go with best case scenario of this guy would be Brandon Hagel, and that's Carter Bear. Intelligent, competitive, excellent passer. I think that the Canucks would be really happy to get this West Coaster on their team. And, I mean, is he BPA at this point? Maybe not, but I think he's right in this range, yeah.
How much does the Achilles laceration scare you?
It's not great.
Yeah, it was scary because it was similar to what Peyton Krebs had, I think, right around his draft year as well. But it was the fact that he was already skating pre-combine.
It sounds like he's going to be good to go for training camp.
So it sounds like he's fine. He's going to get a full summer of working out and all that stuff, which is really big for your development because it can set you back if you miss time on a long injury like that. But it sounds like he's okay. So Carter Bear, I really like the pick. There's a lot of talent there. A lot of Brandon Hagel, Wyatt Johnston kind of
Seth
energy.
Jarvisy. A bunch of those kind of just work ethic, fun wingers that have made impacts in the playoffs here recently on the wing.
Yeah, 100%. Moving on to back-to-back picks from the Montreal Canadiens. We'll get the first one gone to the Habs, and then we'll get on to the back half of this draft.
Yeah, we'll round up the top half of the first round here. We'll go back to the blue line here. The Habs last year took 2 forwards in the first round, so they're going to go to defense first for the first of back-to-back picks. Logan Hensler, a guy that for much of the draft class or much of the draft cycle we thought would be the second defenseman off the board. But a guy that didn't have the best season at Wisconsin. We've kind of seen that be a theme at times at Wisconsin, so I'm not too concerned about that. But he's a 6'2" right-handed defenseman who does a little bit of everything. He's a good skater, good offensively, is fine in his own end, and when you kind of make that package all around, there's enough there that you're like, this could be a solid complementary top 4 guy. And when you've got guys like Caden Gooley and obviously Lane Hudson there, a good right-hand shot to add to the pipeline there, I think would be a good fit for the Habs of first of 2 draft picks here.
Second pick.
And yeah, I think it makes sense for the second pick to add up front, and we're going to go Jack Nesbitt here. 6'4" center. Could be a second-line center to Nick Suzuki one day. Nesbitt's really good in front of the net. He's strong. He's tough. I think this is a guy Kent Hughes and Jeff Gordon would really like one day.
Yeah, I think with all the big centers doing well in the playoffs,
Right.
I think because there's a little run of centers here. I wonder if we're going to get right through them in this kind of pocket where you got Nesbitt, Braden Coots, and Cole Reshny. Maybe Ben Kindle's a center. Maybe
there's a few guys that are like
Murtaugh
center winger.
Yeah. But Nesbitt's the one guy out of that entire pocket that is somewhat big. The rest of them are all in that 5'11".
And he's more than somewhat big,
He's
too.
6'4", and there's a lot that has to come together, I think, for Nesbitt's game. And the guy I have to the Flames at 18 is actually Braden Coots. I think he's probably the most, easiest to project out of this group because I think he didn't have a great year, but he's just kind of that energy puck-hungry center that's probably a third-line center in the NHL, but could be a damn good one. Could be this is a really lofty projection because he's one of the best defensive centers in the league, but an Anthony Cirelli type player that maybe he's not that kind of good peak defensively, but that sort of role on a team, that kind of middle 6 center that could be your 2C if you're bumping a guy up. Could be a guy kind of like Chandler Stevenson kind of vibe sort of thing.
Yeah.
I think he's really easy to see as an NHLer because I think even if he's not a 3C, I think he's at least a 4C because he just works really hard every single night. He's a right-handed center who took a ton of faceoffs for Seattle, and he was really, really good at the U18s and got the C at the U18s, which obviously means he's a good leader as well and respected among his peers, which I think is big. When you're drafting in a pocket of guys and kind of decipher through them, I like Coots, but I did really think of Reshny here as well.
Speaking of Reshny,
yeah,
he'll go to St. Louis at 19. St. Louis needs more young centers. They have Dalibor, Dvorsky coming through, but it kind of tails off after that. So I think the Blues are a pretty smart organization in terms of drafting, and I think they would see a ton of value here. He's a guy with a ton of hockey sense, good passer, a little undersized, which it kind of goes against the grain with the Blues. They like their heavy players, but I like Reshny here. And I think the number one reason is the value. They think he's BPA.
Yeah. And he was unbelievable to finish the year. Was unreal. Just lights out in the WHL playoffs. Put up some pretty silly numbers there. Dragged Victoria probably longer than they should have gone in the WHL playoffs, and was great at the U18s as well. If you want to play your best hockey at the end of the season, that's what Reshny did, and I think it's going to make him pretty comfortably a top 20 pick here.
Yeah, and I think that's fair. I think the big question mark about him is the skating. For a smaller guy, you kind of want him to be a little bit faster.
He's not the super speedy,
but
undersized guy.
What is good in his sense, though, is that he does a lot of good things in the middle and in his own end too, two-way. Yep. So I think he does project safely as a center at the next level, which I think you definitely want if you're St. Louis. You don't want a guy that's, he's a center, but he's probably going to end up being a winger. No, I think Reshny will be a center in the NHL at the pro level.
Yeah, you look at smaller centers and you kind of automatically shift them to the wing a little bit in your brain when you're talking about some draft stuff. He has all the traits of a smaller center that can stick at center at the NHL level.
Yeah, I like it. And I see a little Ryan Strome in Cole Reshny. But going on
so we got a Dylan Strome comp and a
Ryan
Strome.
Oh, look at that. The brothers are stuck in
what
my
about
head.
the one guy who hasn't made it?
Matthew
Strome?
Strome? Yeah. Well, you can't compare
That's
him
for
to
the
Matthew
32nd
yet.
pick.
Yeah. All right.
That's Calder Cup hero Matthew Strome.
There you go. All right, on to 20, the Columbus Blue Jackets. This is the Minnesota Wild pick, right?
Yes, from the David Jiricek trade, and they're going to replace that in the system with a right-handed defenseman here. We just talked about an undersized guy, so let's go to one of the biggest guys in the draft, Blake Fiddler. Some NHL bloodlines there. He's the son of Vernon Fiddler. Actually is representing the United States now, representing Canada at the U17 level, has switched to the United States here recently. And he's just a behemoth. Measured in at 6'5", 220 at the combine after being 6'4", 200-ish. throughout the season. So he's already got that legit pro size. In fact, you talk about guys who maybe need to add size when they reach the NHL. He might be a guy that even needs to slim down a little bit. But he's a pretty good skater for his size, play stopper, shutdown type guy. I think he's got obviously the physical traits to be a really good shutdown defender in that kind of Brandon Carlo type mold. The question will be if he has enough of that puck moving and skating ability to reach that next level. But the wingspan, the physical game, I think are going to make him a really valued defenseman in this range of the draft. And I think he fits with the Blue Jackets here after they took Charlie Ellick in the second round last year and have a couple more of those more offensive guys in the system as well.
Nice. Let's rattle off a couple here. 21 to the Senators.
All right, this is another size pick, and like you said with Reshi, another guy who finished the year really strong, William Horkov. He's the son of
Combine star, yeah.
Combine star William Horkov set the broad jump record, surpassing E.J. Emery from last year. Not that necessarily means anything, but Horkov's the son of former NHLer Sean Horkov. Sean Horkov and Steve Stais were teammates in Edmonton for a long time, so there's some familiarity there.
Yeah.
Not that necessarily leads to a first-round pick, but Horkov, big 6'4", toolsy center, needs to work on his skating, but I think the familiarity with the family, maybe that's something you feel like he can get to and he can work on. So, yeah, I like the pick for Ottawa here.
And he was playing NCAA games this year as well, which really helps.
And he was better in the NCAA than he was with the national team development program.
And speaking of his dad's a development guy.
Exactly.
Start connecting all the dots. You're like, this guy's got some potential.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's another riser. This guy has been, I think, projected, my guy I got here at 22 to the Flyers, projected kind of right around this area all year, and that's Cam Reed, defenseman. And I think a lot of offensive upside here. Not like a small guy by any means. He's 6'1", somewhere in there. Can move the puck. I think there's talk of Cam York potentially being his time sort of running short in Philly. I think could be a top 4 guy on the left side, and kind of a set and forget kind of guy. Could run a second power play maybe in the NHL. And I like Cam Reed. I think he's really good at moving the puck, and he's a great skater too.
Cool. At 23, I'll go with Lakovic.
Linden
Lakovic. Yeah.
Lakovic.
Sick player.
You never know with those, whatever that is, Slavic last name. Played for a terrible Moose Jaw team, but certainly
harsh.
Yeah,
no, it's true. They were not good.
But produced, 6'4", skilled. I like this for Nashville in terms of like, okay, Hagens is your like for sure thing in terms of high end skill. You're bringing more high end skill into your system. Barry Trotz needs to do that, and this guy's got more height, more strength, and I obviously the upside isn't quite there, but I like this pick for Nashville in terms of just you look at their system and it's like, okay, you need to have game breakers, and here's another one.
Yeah, I actually disagree a little bit. I think he does have that upside. Like I think the size.
I was comparing to Hagen.
Oh, sure. Sorry. But yeah, like he's big, a little bit lanky, but like he's not like the typical power forward. Like he didn't rack up penalty minutes or anything like that this year. That's where you want the physical side to come along. And if he had that physical side, we're probably talking about him on that first slide, not in the second slide of the second half of the 16 picks here. But yeah, as you mentioned, really good on a not very good WHL team. And I think there's some legit top 6 upside here.
Sweet.
Fair enough. Moving on to the Kings. What you got for us?
Yeah, a bit of a slider here. A guy that we, coming into the draft cycle, probably thought would be a top 15 pick, if not a top 10 pick. Malcolm Spence, who had a good season in Erie, but he's one of the older guys in the draft among first-year draft eligible. So he's a guy that scouts have seen for a long time, and he's taken steps each year in the OHL, but maybe not as big as you were hoping for. Had a 30-goal season in the OHL. He's going to be going to Michigan in the fall, so one of those older prospects in the draft class taking advantage of the ability to go and challenge themselves in some new opportunities in the NCAA. And I think at this point in the draft for LA, I think he's pretty close to a best player available kind of thing, where he's a competitive, projects as a top 9, maybe complimentary top 6 winger. And I think he just ticks a lot of those boxes to be a perfectly capable mid-20s draft pick here in this range.
Apparently, he lost 15 pounds this year.
Yeah, he had a big illness.
He sliced his tongue open in a game, and so he had like a growth on it, so he couldn't really eat.
Yeah,
and he was
like
also having like
infection,
issues like
weird
breathing
stuff,
and stuff like that.
Wow.
And so he measured in the combine around like 190. So I think we would lift him a little high. Measured in like a little like way lower in weight, and everyone's like, "Oh, what happened?" He's like, couldn't eat for the back half of the season.
Yeah.
So and he had a good postseason with Erie, and I
Yeah,
like
he's a good player.
I like
He-
Malcolm Spence.
yeah.
I think people are kind of like a little low on him for no real reason, but I think maybe because the first line upside isn't there.
Yeah.
But I think he projects pretty safely as a middle six.
And it's at the point of the
winger.
draft cycle where it's you get excited about the guys who finish strong and maybe not as much as the guys that either had a good start to the season or looked really good in their draft -1. And so you have that balance here. And I think mid-20s, perfectly fine range for Malcolm Spence, and could even still go earlier than this.
25 to Chicago.
We're going Danil Prohorkov here. I may be butchering the
think you're
pronunciation
right.
of that, but giving it my best shot. Chicago hasn't dipped into the Russian pool too much under Kyle Davidson, but I think
Roman Kantsarov, they took a couple
that's
years
true.
ago, yeah.
Yeah, I think they really need to add some size up front. Prohorkov, 6'5", could be a really good goal scorer around the net. I mean, that's like a Cy Young stat line there: 20
Yeah.
goals, seven assists.
that.
Yeah, I think it could be a good fit alongside Bedard and Nazar one day. A lot of smaller forwards, even Frondell, not the biggest guy, so getting a big, powerful winger who can be a net front presence one day, I think makes a lot of sense.
Very different player I have going 26 to the Preds. That's Colin Potter, who is
Polar opposite.
probably the fastest guy in the draft. Like just an unbelievable skater. Played at Arizona State this year and wasn't exactly their best player, but the skating is there. And when you have a tool that's that good, I think that really like at the very least, like this guy could fly in your bottom six or on your fourth line. And if he can put some skill together, maybe like work on his shot a little bit in his hands, like it's a player with a lot of upside because you can't really coach guys to be like that much to hit that level of skating. Like that's something that you develop really young, and Potter is a tremendous skater.
At 27, we're going to go with the first goalie. Joshua
Ooh, here we go.
Ravensburgen. It's also fun because the Capitals already have 2 right-catching goalies, and Ravensburgen is also a right-catching goalie. So they're just going to corner the market. But I feel like, they do have some decent AHL goalies, and, like, there's a lot going on there at the goaltending position. But, I don't know. I feel like the Capitals would look at the board and go, there's good value here with getting Ravensburgen. Like, what are these other teams in front of us thinking? And just, let's have them cook with our goaltending development system. So I like that pick in terms of a team that already has a lot of young NHLers, good prospects, can go with more of a project like Ravensburgen, as all goalies are, and see what happens.
And even when you take a goalie in the first round, you're still looking 5 or 6 years down the road. Like we've seen it in that kind of 2020 range where we saw Wallstedt and Askarov and Knight, all those guys go in the first round, and we're only talking about those guys becoming starters now, and even some of them still being backups or not even becoming NHLers yet. And so even if you're a team like Washington who has your goaltending pretty much sorted for at least the
Couple
next
years,
3-4 years because of the contracts that they just handed out, that a first round pick like this doesn't inhibit their decision making that they've already made in terms of the goaltending at the NHL level. So I actually really like this fit as a team that would make a lot of sense for Ravensburgen.
I think for Washington too, just because their front office is so secure, like no one's going anywhere, it makes sense to invest in a pick you're not going to see for a long time. So, and they're going to have to turn over a new leaf eventually once Ovechkin retires. And I think it makes a lot of sense.
And they've taken some risky picks here recently, or like some high upside picks. When you think about Chris Stahl and Cole Hudson and even Tarek Parashak in the first round, like they've taken a lot of these higher upside guys. You usually think about the high upside as like the skilled forward or the undersized defenseman. First round goalie, I think you could probably put in that same category. So I think it fits a lot for this organization.
He has the tools though, just to make it worth the stab, being 6'5" and being a great athlete. So I like it.
Fair enough. On to the Jets at 28.
Yeah, the Jets, just given what we've seen and kind of the changing landscape of the prospects as well, I think are a very interesting team because they've had some issues signing guys. Like, obviously, the Rutger McGroarty thing is the big one. And so in the draft, especially with these premium picks, you kind of have to take that into account for a team like Winnipeg, where, yeah, you can easily say just take the best player available, don't really worry about some of those other things. I think a team like Winnipeg has to consider some of the NCAA factors and such. And so I have them going for an upside swing and a Western Canadian guy, which I think is the perfect mixture for a team like the Jets. And I have them taking Ben Kendall here. We talked about him briefly a little bit earlier in that group of some centers here. I think he's more likely to shift to the wing, which is why he falls out of this range here. But he was the most productive guy out of all those WHL guys this year in a strong WHL class. Almost hit that 100-point season. Really skilled, pretty speedy center. he could stick at center, but he's on the slighter side and doesn't have the same two-way game, I think, as Cole Reshny, so I think he's more likely to become a right winger in the future. But for a Jets team that constantly needs to supplement their pipeline with guys that are going to stick around, that they can convince to stick around and have that upside, I think Kendall is a perfect late first-round swing for them. And they're a team that has taken upside swings in the past here recently. You think about Brad Lambert and that pick in the late first round. I think Ben Kendall isn't quite that same boomer bust type player. I think he has a better floor than Brad Lambert, but I think he's a guy that could really step into the lineup in 3, 4, or 5 years and be an impact type player in their top 9.
Yeah, you really can't coach production like that. That is just like when a guy puts up that many points, it's really usually not an anomaly. He played center, but often on the wing. I think he was like 5th on the team in faceoff, so not exactly a. He's probably not a center at the NHL level. Even a lot of his work was along the, kind of the half wall and stuff like that. But really, really good playmaker, sees the game really well. I think a lot of the knock on him is that he plays kind of slow. I think he likes to slow down the game, which often works at the junior level. But I mean, you watch playoff hockey; it's like it doesn't slow down.
No.
So that will be something he has to work on. But the shot, the pass, like passing the IQ, it is there.
And the pace of play doesn't worry me too much because we have seen him have that skating ability to turn it up a notch.
Yeah, he 100% can do it, and I think he can reinvent his game a little bit too at the next level to become maybe more of that like Stankoven type player.
Could easily be one of the late first round steals here.
Yes, 100%. Okay, on to Carolina, who always seem to get a late first round steal. Who do you have the Canes taking?
I'm taking Sacha Boumedienne. This is a team, unlike Winnipeg, they're probably not afraid of any signability concerns. He was playing at Boston University last year. Not the best offensive D, not like the most shutdown guy, but just really good two-way, like not going to stand out in any way. Great skater. Not the biggest guy either, but I think Carolina is a team under Eric Tulsky. They're not afraid of sort of undersized D who aren't super offensive or anything like that. So I think it makes a lot of sense here. Could be a top 4 D one day. Maybe he's a third pair guy, but really good skater. He's definitely going to play in the NHL one day.
Really intriguing profile because you mentioned not the best offensive upside, and I agree there. But he also just went to the U18s and set the defensive scoring record there with 14 points in 7 games. There's some other factors there for why he was able to do that. But that kind of showcased a different side of his game than what we saw at Boston University as one of the youngest players in college hockey, period. And measured in at 6'1" and some change at the draft. So he's a lanky defenseman, but not necessarily the smallest guy either. There's definitely a lot of reason to like this kind of guy as this kind of second half, late first round type prospect.
Yeah, and if the Canes are taking him, he's going to pan out. So
Well, yeah, the thing about the Canes, and this is less about the kid and more about them and their philosophy, like they take a ton of Russians. They are not afraid of that. They trade back a lot so they can get extra picks. So, do they even have the 29th pick? Do they trade back to early 30s and get a 40th overall pick for doing that business? It's very possible. Carolina looks at the draft in a very different way than most teams.
100%. At 30 to the Sharks, so my last pick is I'm tapping out of this draft. I have Henry Brustevich. He was really productive with the London Knights as their third guy, kind of stuck behind Dickinson and Bonk, but still put up a decent amount of points, right shot guy. That is what the Sharks need in their system. We saw his older brother, Hunter Brustevich, has panned out really, really well, at least to finish off his junior career, took a big step. I think Brustevich could take a step like his brother did next year with the Knights with Bonk and presumably Dickinson both moving on to the pros.
And the Sharks have seen a ton of him as well because they just took Dickinson as well.
Exactly. And I think he's a high upside guy. He's not small. He's got legitimate
6'2" right shot. There's a lot to like.
Legitimate top 4 potential. I think if he had played on a different team and got a little bit more opportunity, I think he could be well up this draft board because he didn't get that same opportunity to showcase himself. Obviously, he's playing in the biggest Memorial Cup and stuff like that. He's in,
but not power play one.
But he's not on PB1, so he doesn't get to show off his offensive upside. But he can move the puck, he can skate, and I think he's got a real legitimate shot to be a top 4 defenseman in the NHL. And if you're getting that at 30, that's a win every day of the week.
Well, and don't underestimate the London Knights factor here, where they're just a factory of producing NHLers, and NHL teams look at that and go, okay, this kid's on the right track because, he's in a good environment and he'll go back to a good environment. Maybe that's not quite the, deal breaker or deal sealer in the first round, but for later picks, it's we like where he is.
Yeah. 100%. Let's go to 31. 2 more picks in this draft. Calgary. So these ones, 31, 32. We were recording this prior to Game 6 of the Stanley Cup Final. So these picks could flip. 31 Calgary is actually the Florida pick, so if they were to win the Cup, it would be 32. And vice versa. That is the pick Philly's getting for Edmonton trading for. Was it Sam O'Reilly last year?
London Knights factor.
Yeah, ended up that was they gave up the 31st pick for O'Reilly. So we'll see if they're actually end up losing the deal. It'll be 31 for 32, or will it be 31 for 31? Regardless, we have Calgary picking 31. Right now, this could change. Hopefully, you guys weren't both eyeing the exact same player. But 31 to Calgary. Who you got, John?
Yeah, I think Calgary, with multiple picks in the first round, can take a bit of a flyer here on Mason West. Gigantic forward out of Minnesota. Played most of the year Minnesota high school. Played some in the USHL for Fargo. He's going back to play football. He plays football and hockey. He's better at hockey. He was at the Combine. He's kind of like 90% committed to hockey, 10% to football if we're dicing up the commitment level in terms of his life and his lifestyle. If, some big school comes around and says, hey, we want you to be our quarterback and, here's some nil money and all that kind of stuff, maybe that changes things, the equation for Mason West. But there's some potential here, especially honestly, if you think about it, him not devoting his whole life to hockey, I think is a positive for him right now as far as projectability. Teams can talk themselves into, there's more untapped potential there than the typical first round pick. So this guy could easily go in the second, but I think I like the idea of Calgary, taking a swing. A guy from, we talk about with Winnipeg, retaining players. Okay, this guy's from Minnesota, kind of Alberta-esque in that sense. Maybe I'm stretching a little bit there, but let's face it, the Flames are one of those teams that sometimes has to sort of pick for I guess signability to some extent. So
If he were to not sign, do they get a comp pick?
Yes.
for that?
Only if he's drafted in the first round.
Gotcha.
Which could be a factor for a team taking him in the first round.
Would it be a comp first round pick?
No, it would be a comp second round pick. So it would be
Yeah.
the same overall in the second round. So if you took him 31st here and he didn't sign,
You get a
then
late second round
you would
pick.
get the 31st pick in the second round.
Gotcha.
it's not
A lot of
it's
risk
not
there,
great, but there's risk there. But at least he gets something if he decides to go football.
Well, opposed
route.
to taking him, if you take him 33rd overall,
You get
in the
nothing.
second
Yeah.
round,
Right,
in
you
second
get nothing.
round gets a little trickier there.
maybe
But-
he could moonlight for the Stampeders too.
Yeah,
There you go. Now we're talking.
Yeah, okay. Mason West, 31. Last pick of the first round. Philadelphia Flyers on the clock once again. Who are they going with?
Yeah, every team wants this huge forward who can skate and do a little bit of everything. We saw the breakout season of Alexei Protas this season. Before that, it was always the Tage Thompson comps. But I think you look at the development path, and I think the Alexei Protas is more of the prototype for what teams are wanting to do. Because Tage Thompson, I think, is a very unique player with his shot and size and everything there. Whereas Protas was much more of this project that kind of flourished and all came together this season. And I have the Flyers taking a guy who's in that mold as a project type player in Vaclav Nestrasil out of the USHL, Muskegon, who had a really solid season, kind of came a little bit out of nowhere this season after coming over to Muskegon last year as a check forward. Had a really solid season for them. Had a really good playoff run with 7 goals, 13 points, and he measured in at the Combine at 6'5.5". Has a lot of room of physical growth to go. He's still weighed in the mid 180s, so there's a lot of weight to add to become more of this power forward. But he skates pretty well, has good hands, good playmaker, has a bit of that physical game that can come along as well. And I think when you're talking about players or prospects in this kind of late first round or into the second round, you talk about the pure upside of things. He has a really intriguing upside as the second line power forward type that would be an interesting complement behind Matvei Michkov on the wing.
I like it. And that is our first round completed. There's a lot of really interesting names we did not
Very fascinating
need
draft,
to get to in our draft. So quickly before we close up, I want to just go around the horn with every year there's always that one guy that doesn't go in the first round, and then everybody is clamoring on Twitter.
Trade up to 33.
Like trade up for 33, get Stankoven, get Chris Dahl a second round pick.
Yep.
Hovered right around there. There's
Alex DeBrincat way back.
DeBrincat. There's always somebody. So we see this board right now. You could even use a guy on this board that you think maybe he doesn't end up getting taken the first. What's the name that just comes to mind? That's that pure production that everybody loves on social media that ends up going early in day 2.
Yeah, for me, the guy that I think is maybe a bit to that question, but I think the most likely guy we didn't mention here to go in the first round is Bill Zonin. 6'2", played center this season. I think he's more likely to shift to the wing. Just a very likable player who had a strong season in the QMJHL, who has that physical package, work ethic, likable player, and production combination that could easily see him go in the first round here or be a high pick on day 2. In addition to all the fun players that I'll kind of loop back on that are the 5'6" guys that are super fun.
Yeah. What about you?
Simon Wang, this
nice.
Chinese player, defenseman who only came to Canada a couple of years ago, and I just think people will kind of fall in love with that story and just the projectability of a guy who's 6'6" and can skate well.
Super well. Yeah.
So I think there's going to be fans on Twitter right when the 30-second pick goes where they say my team needs to get one.
Yes. No, as you guys are going through, just like more names are coming to mind for me right now. And I'm like, oh, like there's this guy. Like, I think if I got to pick one that I think people will be clamoring about on social media, I don't even think he'll go till like the 3rd round. I don't even know if I would want my team to take him, but that's Ivan Ryabkin. This guy preseason.
Another
people are
Muskegon
talking
guy.
about as a top 5 pick. The skill, the talent is there. Just apparently it's just attitude issues through the roof or just weird things going on there.
And like some discipline issues on the ice. Like he's not the uncompetitive type. He's a very competitive player on the ice. Scored at a 40-goal pace in the USHL, but there's so many question marks about, as you mentioned, the work ethic or the discipline on the ice. Like there's so many questions there that he's a fascinating. Like I could see him going in the 1st round still as a late swing. I could see him going in like the 4th round.
I think it's like realistically there's like probably a 90% chance that guy doesn't play in the NHL, but there's also a 10% chance that he does, and part of that is like he could be a first-line player.
I also think there's a 95% chance he's a Carolina Hurricane.
Yeah, it does just sound like a project pick by them. All right, last guy who you got?
I think Cameron Schmidt.
Yeah.
It's really
Yeah,
interesting.
good call.
Going to be interesting to see where he goes. He's only 5'7". He's a winger, but elite skater. Really good shot. Like could be maybe a 30-goal scorer one day, or maybe he doesn't play in the NHL at all. Could go maybe in the back half of the 1st round, but maybe he slips all the way to the 2nd or 3rd. I think he's a bit of a wild card.
Yeah, there's a few really small guys. LJ Mooney is the...
Adam Benak is the other one. 2 tiny guys that might not even be drafted, but if they do get drafted, we might be looking at them in like 6-7 years as like, oh my gosh, this guy was a steal.
Mooney's been like the most productive like U.S. like player in his like kind of year like forever.
Yeah, his cohort.
But he might just be like 5'7" on skates kind of thing. Like he's really
and he's
small.
slight too. Yeah.
Yes, so that's
if you're taking those kind of guys, you have to accept that you might just be getting like a Rocco Grimaldi.
Yes, like who is that actually in the NHL? Like it's really hard to push that out. But that is our 1st round mock draft here at the Score with a couple bonus names added at the end. Really excited for the draft coming up just in over a week now, which is crazy because the Stanley Cup final is still going on as we record this. But we will have draft coverage here at the Score up until the draft, including at the draft, and even after in the days to come, I believe, fellas.
Yeah, we've got a lot of great draft content coming up. We've already got some live on the app between positional rankings, some prospect spotlights. John, I know you've got some features coming up. And then on draft day itself, if you're not following along on the Score app, you're doing it wrong because you've got live updates, alerts, lots of great information we're going to have for you on draft day. So it's going to be a very, very fun time to follow along.
So make sure you stay tuned for that. But for all of us here at the Score and at Top Shelf, Kyle Cushman, John Matisz, Josh Wegman, and myself, Aidan Thakkar, that's all we got for you this time, and we will see you next week.